We can't say the future without AI. I mean, there's no way around it. 50% of workers now believe AI is going to improve their experience. When I come into the meeting room, I need a way to incorporate my AI with what's going on in the meeting. It's almost a bring your own AI type of a concept. Most of what we do in our day-to-day is going to change significantly.
Hear the latest AV trends and predictions in this episode of Crestron's Smarter Spaces podcast on your preferred podcast platform.
Yeah, I don't know. This is a tricky one because I check the comments for Avi because like he's going to be able to answer this way better than
Paging Avi Rosenthal.
Mitchell, we need an Avi Rosenthal, very similar but not exactly like the Avengers.
News team, assemble!
AV needs to get their own chips. THX is back in the CI channel and shades lighting and networking as a home technology opportunity. All that and more next on ResiWeek. This is ResiWeek, episode 451, recorded Monday, September 30th, 2024. Foundational Truths. This is ResiWeek, your weekly look at the CI part of the AV industry. My name is Tim Albright. I am your host today because I don't know where Matt Scott is. We can't find him. He's somewhere in Canada, I'm certain. With me to discuss the news and information, first and foremost, Katye McGregor-Bennett from KMB. Welcome, ma'am.
Hello, sir. Thank you for having me on.
Absolutely, thank you. And Seth Johnson, our buddy from Blackwire. Welcome, sir.
Thanks for having me back.
Absolutely. First story, guys, comes to us. There's a couple stories coming out of CEDIA still. First is THX. They have relaunched their education program at CEDIA this year. They're partnering with home audio expert Jerry Lime. The iconic brand known for its product certification and the famous text marketing campaigns of the 90s and 2000s. They held a comprehensive quote-unquote seminar at CEDIA Expo in Denver, led by Lime and THX's VP of Global Technology, Steve Martz. The session covered THX's history, audio fundamentals, and modern video technology. This move signals THX's commitment to reestablishing its presence in the market, offering dealers and enthusiasts valuable insights into home theater setup, room acoustics, and the latest in spatial audio formats. Seth, we'll start with you on this. I mentioned the fact that, well, quite frankly, THX for a minute was the biggest name in home theater, the biggest name in home theater audio. They let that go a bit. We can discuss maybe why or how, but they are aiming to get back and get back some of that share. So the first question really is what do we think about this play by THX to kind of come back and reintroduce themselves to the CI channel?
It's not a bad idea. It's a good brand, right? Like it's in front of movies that everybody knows and loves, right? The little screen that plays beforehand. I think most of the serious theater companies that are out there these days are really talking about RP22. There's a couple of other RP documents coming out soon for video and not calibration, but measuring and that kind of thing. I think they're really looking at that as the way forward and not so much something like THX, which when I was doing home theater, I'll put it in quotes because it's not what these guys are doing. When I was doing home theater 10 or 20 years ago, getting the THX logo meant that there were some basic requirements that were met. The speakers could produce sounds and that kind of thing that they're supposed to. They respond in the frequency ranges. It was a good sticker, like Intel Inside, right? Like you knew what was inside, right? Outside of that, the measurements, the things like being 30 degrees and this, that, and the other, I don't think that makes too much sense these days because we're all going for, we're not like treating rooms anymore for that one sweet spot. We're trying to get a big sweet spot for multiple people in the room. And I don't know if they're going to be able to address that with, a logo on a speaker. But it's a great name and it's good for companies to have on their speakers and on their amplifiers and that kind of thing. Because it certainly, ticks off a box. I'm using a THX approved piece of gear. It'll be up to them to make it mean something again, because I do, like you just alluded to, I do remember it meaning something. And then I would see headphones with THX certifications on them. and car audio with THX certification. Like, well, how is a car audio with anything to do with the theater,
No.
George Lucas? Like,
Yes.
I don't think so. But we'll have to see what they're wanting to do with this and how it plays out over time. But I think most of the serious home theater guys are looking at those RP documents that are coming out from CEDIA and those working groups and really leaning heavy into those, because they are chock full of just great information and really more than a logo actually tell you how to sell the room than focus on equipment that has a certain certification or logo on it.
Well, and really quickly, to Seth's point here, our RP22, if you don't know what it is, go to CEDIA's website and search for it, because they will have the documentation there. It is a list of standards. It is a list of best practices. And as Seth said, a point-by-point way to sell a home theater system and minimums and stuff like that. So, Katye, I want you to put your marketer hat on for me for a second, or not for me, but more for THX, and give them some free, unsolicited advice. I will put the caveat here that it's worth what you're paying for it here, folks. THX, you're not paying a dime, but Katie's an incredible marketer. So
I'm not sure if that was overly positive, but we'll go with it.
no,
Here's
it is
some free.
positive for you. Positive for you.
Thank you.
But
Thank you.
they need some help.
Yeah.
Let's be frank. They need some help. How would you advise them here? Like, because it's been a minute since THX has meant something. Certainly an education program is a great first step, but it's not everything. So how would you advise them going forward?
Yeah, I think there's some cute little catchphrases that we often use, and there's educate and inspire, and those two tend to go together. So they're stepping off on getting the education side of it done, but I think they need to significantly up the timeline, expedite the timeline on the inspiration side of it, which is the people need to love the brand again. And so how to do that? Give them reasons to love the brand again. And I think leaning into RP22 is one way to do it. But what does the brand stand for, and how is it meaningful to the integrator, and flipping that to the consumer mindset is, what does THX mean to the consumer? And therefore, how do we in the integration community utilize that as a hook to not only introduce what we do to a new audience, but also to bolster what we do to an audience that may question whether we're bringing great value to it, and can we just do it ourselves for cheaper? Which, of course, is the biggest competitor in the room, is the question, can I do it myself cheaper with less complexity? We need to circumvent that as much as we can. So having things like THX in our bag, so to speak, as part of our arsenal from the integration community standpoint, we support that. Yeah, we're designing, engineering, and installing and integrating theaters that rise to that challenge, using it at the higher end, but also using it at the lower, the entry level as well. It's up to us in the integration community to introduce that which THX does, and that, other brands that operate at that level, and make it meaningful, right? I mean, it's up to the brand to do it on a daily basis, but if we're not talking the talk and introducing it into our sales process, how will consumers ever know that it's important and meaningful, and something that they should be coming to us for, as opposed to trying to do it themselves, right? So not that you can necessarily, I'm not saying THX is a DIY scenario, but that, just the DIY scenario is our biggest competitor and challenge that we face right now.
It's kind of gotten there, though. Hang on, because that leads me to my second question for you. Seth brings up the point that you can buy THX headphones, you can buy a THX car stereo. That feels very much like, if it's not do it myself, do it yourself. It's
mainstream.
Do it with me, right?
Yeah.
So shouldn't they pull back on some of that consumer-ish, like, branding or consumer-ish, labeling or
yes and no. I mean, yes and no. It's a really slippery slope, and if we were having this conversation 10 years ago, my answer would be much different. But the reality is that our piece of the pie continues to shrink, no matter whether our sales are up or sales are down. Piece of our pie continues to shrink. The only way to reverse that is to get more mainstream interest in what we're doing, and make it more available to a broader group of the audience that has the potential to be interested in what we do. So having big brands that have big budgets. And I've been on this soapbox before from a different perspective, but big brands with big budgets give us a bigger and better opportunity to reach a broader audience. And so, whether it's DIY, do it yourself, do it for me, do it with me, any of those, having brands with budgets that are talking about the joy of entertainment and how to bring that home, that only is helping us. We just have to harness it and make it realistic and relevant for the audience that, and I say we as, kind of global but every integrator is different, right? So, it's keeping within the boundaries and the, the scope of the work that you do and the type of audience that you serve. You have to look at the brands and go, okay, what is this? How is this going to be most relevant to the audience that I want to serve? And then harness that and put it to work. THX, from a marketing perspective, back to that, I mean, they've got deep pockets, they've got a big budget, they've got the ability to provide to the integration community more assets to draw more attention and raise more awareness. So that's where I get really excited, and that's the soapbox I've stood on here, many times with you guys for different topics. Is the bigger the budget that we have available to the community, the better that the majority can benefit from. So
I was thinking the marketing budgets they have, the reason they're in a car is because they have that money to throw at, Porsche or whatever that has a, THX. And you're in the same space with the same consumer that recognizes the THX logo and the fancy car system they have that they like with the fancy system that's getting installed in their house. So I think that's a good thing. I think one thing that's coming out of these RP documents too, especially when it comes to the, testing and understanding of like what these speakers actually do, we're going to start understanding what that THX certification actually means, because unlike the pro space where you get a polar plot, you get data from the speaker manufacturers when you go and buy the speaker. We're not provide that on the Resi side. Like we don't get that very often. We don't see that very often. We don't even know true speaker specs. I even saw like the FTC the other day was like, hey, amplifier manufacturers, cut it out again. We're going to slap you again and stop making up wattages on amps and that kind of thing. So like there's that. We're going to understand like what these measurements mean and get real measurements from these manufacturers, because and we're going to understand what the THX certification means when we say, oh, this is a THX certified speaker. It's going to work great for your home theater, and we can measure that and follow up, and make sure that it does later on, because we're going to have all the education that we need and like you said, from the RP documents and the general guidelines from them on how to test and set this stuff up later. So I think this it's all part of the same process. And, if it's got a shiny THX sticker on it and it looks good and it sounds good, I mean, it must be good, right?
Must be good. All right. Next couple stories actually are again, more stories coming out about CEDIA still. First though is about PowerShades, and they did something interesting. They unveiled their new smart lighting line at CEDIA 2024. The company's latest innovation includes downlighting and flex RGB strip lighting designed to integrate with existing home automation systems. That, coupled with another article about the plethora of networking gear, everything under the sun, including Wi-Fi 7, which I learned an awful lot about at about 3 or 4 different booths in Denver. Katye, I'm going to start with you on this. From a dealer standpoint, where does networking and where does, I'm going to call it light control, because that's what I've learned in the last few years, combination of shades and lighting, right? Where should dealers put their focus? Where should they put their energy when it comes to these various categories that isn't a display and isn't speakers, right? It's not distributed audio anymore. It's not distributed video anymore. It feels like networking and light control is like the area that it feels like the industry in general is telling dealers this is where you should focus on for best customer support, best customer service, as well as for the bottom line.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. This is another one of the soapboxes that I've stood on with some frequency here, so it may not sound too unfamiliar to listeners that come back for ResiWeek week after week. Networking is a foundation. So where should they put their energy? They should have put 100% of their energy into making sure that 100% of their team, that at least are customer facing or in the field, are networking experts. Get that right, and everything else downstream has a much higher likelihood of operating as it was intended to and achieving the expected outcome. Pay less attention to it, and everything downstream has more of a likelihood of becoming problematic or being problematic from the start. I'll go even further than that, say, and don't pay close attention to it, and you and your team will be chasing ghosts that will cripple your company, both from a cost and a resource perspective. It's that classic scenario. We have no idea why that cable box continues to trip. We have no idea why there's buffering going on. We have no idea. Well, foundational element of the project. Go back to the very beginning. The deeper you get into the project, the further you go along with it, the harder it is to identify where the problems exist. So I think literally networking is one of the absolute foundations of every project. And everybody on the team needs to be working at a very high level. One of the brands that you mentioned in the article was Spec Ops. And I mean, I think that's not that they're the only one, but just when you look at the caliber of brands that are coming into the channel, they're not doing it because they're entertained by the small nature of the business that might be possible here. They're looking at it as being a multi-billion-dollar opportunity that the smart home industry represents. And again, get that right, and everything else that goes along will have a much higher likelihood of working. When we're looking at a labor shortage that, yes, we're starting to make some inroads, but we don't have the talent that we need here across the board to serve the industry, to serve the business that we have, let alone what we're hoping to garner. You really do have to look at this as being, it's absolutely critical. So, shifting over to light controls, I think I love the fact that before we even started recording, you had mentioned that, and it's sort of in quiet corners we've been talking about this category expansion, and it isn't just lighting anymore. Yeah. It really is light control. And I think the more that, or I should say lighting or shading, and I think the more that we talk about it internally in the industry and get really comfortable with that narrative, the more relevant and relatable it is to a consumer audience. It's one thing to go and talk about having automated shades or motorized shades in your house, but when you talk about the fact that it's actually controlling the light and it's benefiting the interior and the exterior, it's benefiting what's inside, it's protecting what's inside, it's creating lower heating bills, all of those kind of talking points, and it comes from controlling light and either maximizing it or minimizing it depending on what the needs of the property are. So, and understanding what the needs of the property, that's really what integration professionals do, is understanding what the needs of the property are and then delivering that which will achieve the best and most productive outcome. So it really, to me, it makes perfect sense that networking and light control are two categories that continue to be important to the community. I think from an integration standpoint, in order to control light, you have to be able to automate things and you have to be able to control things across platforms. And there's really no other trade that's more perfectly aligned with that role than an integrator. We just need to get really familiar with the narrative and start, talking at a consumer level, but also being able to translate that into trade speak as well, so that our position is understood.
Seth, same kind of question is which category here should folks focus on beyond, the typical, I put in TVs and I put in speakers?
Well, as a distributor who focuses heavily on networking and lighting solutions.
So both, and call
flip a coin here. Yeah, I don't know. Which is your favorite baby? Let's see.
I have an answer for that. Just don't tell them.
Yeah. I would say, from my perspective, and I am just a lowly software engineer at Blackwire, but from my perspective, exactly what Katye said, networking is the foundation of the house. If you have consumerish or, consumers get grade networking gear in a house that needs enterprise level gear, it's night and day. Like, it's absolutely night and day to go from one to the other. One of our very successful lines is Ruckus and Netgear. Both of them, we both have both of their Wi-Fi 7 products on our site, and they're great. But before those are out, the Wi-Fi 6, enterprise network stuff goes off the shelves. At the same time, a lot of times you run into networking that's maybe not as profitable. Not in the case of Ruckus and Netgear, though. We still have margin in those. But the lighting products, that's a massive industry. LED lighting alone, a couple of years ago, we got involved with reselling American Lighting products, and discovered there's a learning curve. We even made our own software to spec and sell LED lighting, because it's a little, there's enough a learning curve where it's like, I think most integrators could easily pick it up, but there's all those little easy mistakes to make along the way that we discovered that weren't very fun to make. And when you don't make money on a job, it's no fun to do anymore. You'll never do it again. And I think there's enough money on lighting control for integrators to do because the electricians don't want to do it. No one else on the job site wants to do it. If you want control in the house, you have to go to an integrator. Everybody knows that. There's enough money to be made there. Figuring that out and putting it all together is really going to be a profit center for a lot of dealers out there. Most of the dealers I've talked to who got started with lighting before I did are now electricians because they have found that it's such a profit center for their company that they've gone ahead and just bought an electrical company out because of the profits they've made off of that over the years. So it's an extremely profitable thing to do. And again, the foundation of all this is going to be the network. Like you can't get anywhere, you can't get anywhere with any of these products if your network is causing fits for you. It just makes things more difficult to do. And if you don't start with that foundation, which is a great word for it, if you don't start with that foundation, you're just going to have problems with every piece of equipment on down the road. If the idea is to make money and stay in business, both of these, a good solid enterprise grade foundation in a house that demands it, absolutely. You may not need that. You may get away with like Eero or something like that. It may just be fine. Again, customer needs, but putting that in is going to not cause problems with the lighting control system. And, that could be another profit center for you. So I would say, yes, the answer is both, but both, measure both as to how well you can get involved with them. There's a learning curve to networking, just like there's a learning curve to lighting. And if you mess up one, you're going to lose money on it pretty quickly by troubleshooting or being on the phone and that kind of thing. And that's never a fun thing. Again, the reason we made both our network provisioning services and our lighting services are because we identified, like, if you have a bad time on the job site as an integrator, you're not going to go back and resell this product. It's not, but we know it works. We know it's a great product lines to put in. We know how it works. And if we can help you and assist a dealer to get all this stuff put out, installed, then it's going to work better for everybody. You're going to be happy. Your client's going to be happy. You're going to get paid, and you're going to do it again. So, again, learning curves, but again, it's all profit, pure profit if we get it right.
Yeah. Not for nothing, but the actual host of this program started out his career doing lighting. Matt has long been a huge lighting nerd. He loves it. He lives it and breathes it. He does other things now, but that is his core, and that is his roots. And so, yeah, Mitchell should have saved this story for him, but who knows when he'll be back. So, it might be 2025. I don't know.
He can chime in then.
Yeah. And he has a Twitter, and he has a LinkedIn, knock himself, and he has Facebook, so he can chime in there. Last story comes to us, quite frankly, from the Wall Street Journal. Mitchell was nice enough to link to a story that I wrote based off of that. But here's the bottom line. Qualcomm, according to the Wall Street Journal, is positioning themselves to buy Intel. That's a huge thing. That's a huge thing. And here's where this led me. Through the pandemic, we all heard the supply chain issues. Everybody on this call, everybody listening. We all had supply chain issues, and one of the biggest ones was chips. Because the foundries that made the chips, they were shut down because of COVID. And when they started back up, they started at the most profitable and most expensive chips. And let me give you a hint. It was not AV chips. It was the chips going into the F-150 and other automobiles, right? So those chips, they sell, let's say, between $500 and $1,000. The AV chips, they sell from $5 to $50 US. So guess which ones they started with? Well, they started with the back order, the ones they make the most money. They're a for-profit corporation. That was their job. So here's my take, and Katye, we're going to start with you on this. My take is this. You've got this situation happening with Qualcomm looking to purchase Intel. Intel is a supplier for a number of AV companies. I list in the article, I know of 3 companies that design, engineer, and some of them manufacture their own chips. SDVOE, HD-Base-T, and I know that Extron does it on a number of their products as well. My call, my plea to AV manufacturers is to take this story and to take this as a, hey, let's make our own chips kind of rallying cry. Just in general, and it doesn't have to be my idea, because my idea might be stupid. I'm probably missing something because I'm not a manufacturer. But what can manufacturers do to forego the issues that we had during and after COVID, and protecting, quite frankly, our chips supply line?
It's a big conversation. It's a big conversation. I'll say that Avi Rosenthal should absolutely be in on this conversation. So at some point,
he has his own Twitter. He can chime in as well.
Avi, you got to jump in on this, buddy, because your insights are brilliant and absolutely needed in this. But what I would say to this is, I think that yes, we absolutely do, because we're far too often being put into the victim position, and unfortunately, even though we're in the victim position, we're also therefore left holding the bag too in many cases. And so we're it is in many cases killing us slowly. So yes, I think that the brilliant answer would be for us to have our own chips. But when you step back from manufacturing scenario and outside looking in, is who's going to do it, and what are the complexities of assuming that position, and then how does that become a scenario where it's benefiting more than just the brand that's going in and doing it, right? So, there's a reason that there's only a few glass manufacturers for televisions, right? There's only a few.
Four.
There's
four.
Right, there's four, and I think that's up from two. And so it's just the economies of scale. Just it really isn't there in our industry. As great as we are, we're not going to be able to put up those kind of numbers that would create a neutral environment for a chip manufacturer that would be theoretically dedicated to us. And if it's so I think that there's just fundamentally there's a challenge with that. And then manufacturing, it's obviously going to be overseas, so you've got to have the on-site eyes and ears 24/7 365 to make sure that what's coming off the line is what was intended to come off the line, so the downstream problems aren't introduced. There's just it's an exceptional ask. It would be amazing if it would happen. I don't think that there's really a likelihood of it happening anytime soon. So I don't really have an answer to it. I think it's an interesting notion, but I don't know that how we get there per se.
All right, Seth. Maybe we don't make our own chips, but we can. There's have to be something that we can do. So what can what other than making our own chips can manufacturers do to safeguard?
Yeah, I don't know. This is a tricky one because I check the comments for Avi, because he's going to be able to answer this way better than I.
We need an Mitchell. We need an Avi Rosenthal Batman signal, like right here.
Turn it on. There's a moon.
Very similar, but not exactly like the Avengers.
Paging Avi Rosenthal.
Because I don't want to get sued by Marvel, because that would be bad.
I feel like this is an extremely complex issue. I remember when COVID hit, that was like right after that the factory that was producing basically all of the audio chips in Japan burned down too. So it was like
burned up.
It was like a 1-2 punch. Like not only did the factory burn down, but then also we went to COVID and nobody else was making anything similar, or you couldn't get DSPs and that kind of thing. And I was like, it was a very. I don't ever want to go through that again for a number of reasons, but also like it was a very hard time to get equipment or get anything for that matter. But I don't think we're ever going to be at I don't think like the AV industry in general is ever going to be at the level of needing these like specialized chips as much as a toaster oven or whatever is using some kind of processor, that an IoT toaster oven or something. I don't know, or a truck like you get,
or a truck.
Yeah. They're gonna get things in bigger numbers. They're gonna know exactly how many they need. They're gonna have better forecasting on how many trucks they're gonna be able to sell than our industry does, quite frankly. So I don't think we're ever going to be in the ball game of where we're going to be able to say, okay, if we all center around this one chip and buy in bulk, we'll get it at, as a better price, or like who does that? How do they manufacture it? I don't know. I would think that we maybe learned our lesson about having one company control all the chips, but I guess not. Like
no, we haven't.
We haven't. Yeah,
we're not that smart.
It seems like we keep making the same mistakes over and over again. Yeah. I don't really understand the Qualcomm Intel thing. It seems kind of off to me, but maybe there's something more to it, because I think Intel was supposed to remain doing something that Intel does. They're not going away. They would just
No, absolutely not.
It was going to be something that they're going to center on whatever they find to be most profitable right now, and let Qualcomm have all the other stuff and patents around that. So, I don't know. It seems like we should be more like, maybe there's just to be more than 2 big, large chip manufacturers out there. Maybe 3 or 4 or 5,
maybe 3
10.
or 4.
Yeah.
And maybe
that should
one
be
or
the
2
goal.
in Mexico. I'm just saying, or someplace other than, one country in this,
Yeah.
Anywho, I'm going to get myself in trouble. All right, y'all. Thank you so much. Katye McGregor-Bennett, save me here. How do people connect with you?
So, Tim, thank you so much for having me on today's show. If there's anybody who wants to reach out or follow me on social media, the best way is to look for KMB Communications. You can always know we're the right ones. We've got the logo with the mountain on it, or Katye McGregor-Bennett across all the channels. Thanks for having me on.
Very good. Thank you, ma'am. Mr. Seth Johnson, thank you, sir. How do people connect with you, with Blackwire, or how do they find your fantastic podcast?
Oh, yeah, all 3. Yeah, well, okay. So podcast, you can go to hometech.fm. We actually have a pretty good conversation with Owen Maddock and Tom. I can't pronounce his last name, but they're great guys out of the UK that do home theater and talk really extensively on the RP22 thing. And then blackwiredesigns.com, where you can find out more about our NPS, which is our network provisioning service, long name for, hey, we'll set up all the networking gear for you so you don't have to. And our Blacklight LED linear lighting design tool, which can help you do all the fancy math that you don't have to. We're just trying to save you time and money on the job, and so you can get there and make money on those 2 profit centers of your company.
All right, very good. Thank you so much. For me, for Tim Albright, don't follow me anywhere. If you're interested in what I write, you can go to LinkedIn. I don't know how many Tim Albrights are there, but I'm the only one that looks like this, thankfully. So, but you can go by our website if you would, please, AVNation.tv. That's AVNation.tv. You'll find this program and a host of others. My real job is I host our commercial AV podcast called AV Week. That comes out on Mondays. So you can, if you're interested in the commercial side, and I know you are because all y'all are resi-mercials, and we'll have that conversation later. But you can go check that out as well. We have a brand new Women in AV podcast called The Magic of Technology with Judy Salazar. So you can check that out as well. If you are watching this on YouTube and you are tired of looking at my face and just want to hear my dulcet tones, you can go subscribe to ResiWeek. I don't usually host it. That's Matt Scott. He doesn't have quite as deep as a voice as I am. He's still going through puberty, but you can subscribe on wherever you get your podcast. Or if you are listening to the podcast and you want to know what we look like, you can go watch this on YouTube. So check all that out and more at avnation.tv. That's avnation.tv. Thanks so much for listening. Thanks so much for watching. As all the time we have for ResiWeek.
The network for the AV industry.
What are you listening to?
This
is AV.
This
is AVNation.
This is AVNation.
Hi, this is Jennifer Goodyear
and Erica Carroll
from the Women in AV podcast, where we are encouraged by the incredible stories of women in AV.
Listen in on fun, empowering conversations as we chat with inspiring women, breaking barriers and creating their own path in the industry.
Check out Women in AV on avnation.tv or wherever you get your podcasts.